Hello, my friends. So, storyboards in e-learning are kind of like blueprints for a house. When you have a really good storyboard, it serves as the basis for the rest of your project. It makes it so much easier to get approval on the project itself, and it just streamlines the development process. So in this video, we're going to take a look at how we can create a really strong storyboard. We'll look into some examples, some different approaches we can use, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned and we'll dive into it in a few seconds. Alright, so the storyboard is definitely an integral part of the instructional design process. It's kind of the culmination of all of your instructional design work. It's where you lay out the structure of the learning experience, all of the text that will go into it, all of the programming notes, and a whole lot more. But ideally, you'd be able to show this storyboard to a client. They'd be able to look through it and get a pretty good picture of exactly how the final project will look. And then you would ideally be able to hand it off to a developer, and they would be able to develop it out and bring the whole thing to life. So we'll talk about a few of the nuances there. We're going to really dive deep into it. But first, let's take a look at what you should do before diving into the storyboard, because you really shouldn't just like open up a Word document and start storyboarding. There is some upfront work that we want to make sure we have done here. So we're going to talk about the kind of the source material that you should use when creating a storyboard. So one of the first options is an action map. So we would use this if we were using Kathy Moore's action mapping process. If you've been here on the channel for long, you know we're big fans of that. And I have a whole action mapping playlist if you do want to learn more about that. But essentially the action map includes all of the necessary actions that we need our audience to perform in order to achieve the business goal. So we want to make sure that our storyboard is addressing those actions that we want people to practice. So again, check out the action mapping content. I'll link it in the description if you haven't seen it already. The other more traditional option here would be learning objectives. So if you did an instructional design master's program, we should know by now, writing the objectives are very important because they actually do serve as the blueprint for everything that follows, right? We want to make sure that all of our content, all of our practice activities, all of our assessment questions are directly addressing those learning objectives. And I do have a video about this. It's about how to use Bloom's taxonomy to create these really strong measurable learning objectives. So go ahead and check out that video just to make sure your skills with this are sharp, because if our objectives aren't really good, our storyboard is going to suffer, right? We want to make sure that our whole storyboard is addressing these learning objectives or these actions we've prioritized from the action map. So again, all of these resources I will link in the description below, but we want to make sure that we have these things down before moving on and actually creating a storyboard. And then finally, if we've had the chance or opportunity to conduct some analysis and speak to our audience and, do the performance context analysis, the training context analysis, all of that. We want to have a really good idea of where our audience is coming from, what they're trying to achieve, which challenges are in their way. And when we conduct analysis, we would uncover all of that information. So when we go into the storyboard, we want to try to reflect some of these things we've learned about our audience in the storyboard itself. And let me know if we want to do a full video about that, about how to use the analysis data and kind of weave that into the solution. But I do have a video that you may or may not have seen. It's about the 5 different types of analysis you can use for instructional design. So check out that video too if this seems new to you or if you're not as familiar with instructional design. So all of these will be linked below. Maybe you want to pause this video and check some of those out before moving forward. But let's dive into the storyboarding specific content. So there are some things we need to ask ourselves or decide before actually doing any writing, right? So what is the purpose of our storyboard? Are we using this to guide our own development? Because that's smart sometimes. It's rarely a good idea to just dive right into storyline and start building. Maybe if you're doing that to learn the tool, or if it's just a personal project and you don't really have any stakeholders. But a storyboard can really help, right? It lets you just focus on the content itself and the activities you're including. Yeah, you basically just get to plan it out before actually developing anything. Because if you start developing things and then you're like, oh, maybe that's not the best idea, or maybe I should switch out this content, it gets a lot more time consuming to change things at that point. Now, the other option here is maybe it's to guide a developer through the development. So you probably can imagine if you're creating a storyboard to guide your own development, this project that you've envisioned from the beginning, and that you have a very clear idea of how things will look and function, that storyboard is probably going to be a lot less detailed than if you had to just hand this storyboard off to a developer who knows nothing about it previously and hasn't been involved in it from the beginning. So again, that's why the purpose matters here. If it's for yourself, you can probably get away with it being a lot less detailed. But if it's for a developer who maybe knows very, very little about instructional design, we're going to need to add a lot more detail and guidance to the storyboard itself. Now, approval, that's the other. So these first 2 bullet points, like that's one of the main purposes of a storyboard, I guess, is to guide development. So it's really like, is it guiding my development or someone else's? The other main purpose of a storyboard is to seek approval from your client, your stakeholders, whoever you need approval from before moving forward. Now, maybe you're getting that approval in a very like warm environment, like a meeting where people are there live, and everyone who needs to approve it can get together and you can kind of guide them through the storyboard in real time. If you're doing that, the actual details on the storyboard itself can be a little bit more limited than if you need to get cold approval, for example. So in this case, maybe you're just sending out the storyboard to like 10 different people who need to approve it. And I hope you're not in a position where you need approval from 10 different people. But if you are, probably not going to get all of those people live on a meeting together. You're probably just delivering it cold. So in that case, you are going to want to include more details, maybe more programming notes, so that if someone does really, really want to get a strong idea of what's going on a given slide, for example, that they'll be able to do so using just the text and details you have on the storyboard. So keep these things in mind. Who is developing it? Who is approving it? Because those things may impact how detailed your storyboard is. All right, so now let's get on to some of the juicier stuff. What is actually included on a storyboard? So this is not, maybe this could be an exhaustive list, right? But I'm sure there are other things that could be added to storyboards. And not all storyboards have all of these elements. So the first thing, we probably have a section for the on-screen text, right? What text is going to be on this given screen for this given slide? Because a lot of e-learning is slide-based. If you're developing a video, maybe you won't have a section like this on your storyboard. Voiceover. So maybe we have the actual text itself, like what will be spoken on this slide or on this section of the learning experience. Maybe we include the file names because we already have the voiceover files. We just need to tell the developer which file to drop into this given slide. Or maybe we have both of those things. So we have all of the text that's going to be included, and we have either what the voiceover file will be named or what the voiceover file we have currently is named. All right, images too. So what kind of graphics or images are we including on this screen? Maybe we include a description of the images, like office scene with seating and people sitting there, right? Or maybe we have the image itself. Maybe we found this image on a site like Adobe Stock or something, and we have like the URL to the image, or even just the file name. Because again, sometimes when you hand off a storyboard to a developer, it might also include every single file that they need. There will be a folder, and within that folder, there will be subfolders like with the voiceover and the images and the sound effects and everything else. And the developer is going through here and just looking at file names so they know exactly where to put things. Storyboards like that and getting all of the files, like those projects are a dream to work on as a freelancer, and I'm sure there are full-time employees who just spend all day in Storyline putting these things together. So that's where the file names come into play. Like if someone else is developing it and they're going to have all of these files delivered to them, just be as clear as possible so they don't need to really do any guesswork. Programming notes. This is important too. How do we want this slide to function? Maybe it's as simple as when the user selects this button, jump to slide 1.5, or it could be more complex where after second attempt, show screen 1.2, and after third failed attempt, show this failure screen and X, Y, and Z. And again, just any kind of notes where it's like, we need to tell the programmer how this will function so they can figure out all of the variables and triggers and conditions. We just put it in plain English and the programmer or the developer will figure it all out. Animation notes. Sometimes this is combined with programming notes and it's just like everything the programmer needs to know will go in one section. or we could have a specific animation notes section, and this is where we would maybe tell the developer where to animate in the different objects based on the narration or the voiceover. So for example, maybe after the first sentence, we're animating in one image, and after the second sentence, we're animating in some specific on-screen text. All of that can go in the animation notes, or if they're combined, programming notes can include all of that. And then finally, of course, the slide number and slide title. This just kind of gives everyone a solid basis to refer back to whenever there are issues. So the instructional designer, the developer, if we're like, okay, yeah, let's look at slide 1.3, it will be the same thing in the authoring tool as it would be in the storyboard. It's very easy to catch errors and just communicate on a common ground when we have a really solid naming structure like this for the slides. All right, so again, maybe not an exhaustive list. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you've seen on a storyboard or anything else you would like to include, but I think this covers just about everything I've seen on the storyboards I've created or worked from as a developer. All right, so again, your storyboard might look very different depending on the approach you're taking with the learning project. So we're going to talk about a few different approaches here. One may be a traditional e-learning course. So this is where we have like a title screen, we present some objectives, we have some content, we have some practice activities or questions interspersed throughout, and most likely an assessment at the end. This is what most of the e-learning is like out there. It's what I refer to as traditional e-learning, and it usually stems from traditional learning objectives like we talked about earlier. Now, what I've been working on lately, what I teach in my bootcamp, the projects I'm most excited about, like the client work that I've done most recently, is all this story-driven, scenario-based learning. So this is not traditional. That we work from an action map for this, and the storyboard is a lot more lightweight and less detailed, because it's generally a series of multiple choice questions with a story that weaves them all together. So we'll look at some examples of this, but those two storyboards will likely look very different. And then finally, maybe we're just designing, or maybe we're just writing some scripts for some videos, either educational videos or explainer videos, and we may not need any programming notes. Like maybe it's not interactive at all. We're literally just creating videos. In that case, again, the storyboard will be much more simplified because we don't need any programming notes because there is no interactivity. It's play the video or pause the video essentially. So here we go. We're diving into some examples here. So this is just a quick example I spun up of a traditional storyboard. And again, they all may look a little different. There are different ways to include these elements. You can lay it out however it works best for you. This is just one example. But you notice at the top we have the title and slide number. So slide 1.1 introduction. So when I'm creating this in a tool like Articulate Storyline, for example, I know as the developer, I'm just going to name this 1.1 slide introduction. Now the on-screen text, that's the text that will be on the screen. Again, this is often abbreviated as OST. The voiceover, it tells us which file to include here, and it shows us the actual transcript for that voiceover. So if I do need to create some subtitles or something, I can literally just copy and paste from this storyboard into a subtitle generator or into the transcript space in a tool like Storyline. Animation notes, again, these are pretty conversational. Fade in the on-screen text after the first sentence of voiceover, and ignore my little typo there in the animation notes. And then programming notes, again, this is where we actually say what interactivity we're going for. Go to slide 1.2 when the user selects the Begin Course button. So there we have it. Over here on the right, we have an image file that we're using, and this kind of little placeholder I have right here, that may just be the image itself, or more likely it will be an actual visual of how that screen should look. So maybe it shows the image in the background, it shows where the on-screen text will go, and it actually shows that Begin Course button. So not all storyboards have that level of detail. Obviously, if you're a developer, it's so nice when the instructional designer does give you a storyboard that actually has all of the visual pieces figured out or mostly figured out, and you can just kind of add some final touches. But again, not always the case. Sometimes you just might not have that right column where it has the image and it just all is text-based, and it's up to you as the developer to figure out how things will look. Here's another example. So this is what I'm calling an animation heavy storyboard. And again, you notice I took out some of the elements. You could always put these back in, but the real focus I wanted to show you here is this voiceover section in the middle. So notice the on-screen text is numbered. So 1, 2, and 3, we have, 1 is today you will learn, 2 is how to make a sandwich, and so on and so forth. And notice the images section at the bottom. You could call this assets. You could have it all together where the text and the images are interspersed and numbered in like an assets column here in the storyboard. Again, there are options. These are just examples. But look at the voiceover section. Are you ready to learn today? And then notice in brackets I have OST1. That's where we as the programmer would fade in that first on-screen text element. So today, and then right when the narrator is reading that, we would fade in that first piece of text, which is today you will learn. So then the narration continues, today you will learn how, and at this point we fade in the next piece of on-screen text, how to make a sandwich. And right as the narrator is saying how to make a sandwich, and then image 1 fades in, which is sandwich.jpg. So now we have an image of a sandwich coming in, as well as how, and then the third on-screen text. So I hope you get the idea. I don't mean to put you to sleep with like reading this verbatim, but, and it's very like intuitive here. But I've worked from storyboards like this, where it does have this level of detail where the instructional designer uses little brackets or maybe little like superscripts or subscript numbers so that the developer knows exactly when to enter each of these assets along with the voiceover. So just another thing, don't be surprised if you see this. And if you are handing off animation heavy storyboards to a developer, just giving them those prompts could help them a lot. So more detailed, but saves time in development and just keeps things more consistent with your vision as the instructional designer. Because again, some developers know nothing about instructional design and where we're directing the user's attention and all of that stuff. So that may fall on the instructional designer a lot of the time. All right. So this right here, these are what my storyboards look like these days. So again, like I said, I work on these scenario-based and story-driven projects. I use very, very lightweight storyboards like this, and I usually have them just in a Google document for clients to sign off on. So again, I use this kind of warm approach. So I let my clients know each of these prompts is going to have a continue button. So for example, that first prompt, you arrive at the office, the air is cooled, the lights are off, and there are no signs of movement. That will be on a screen of its own, and there will be a continue button. So when we move on from that, we reach a question slide. What would you like to do? And you notice we have 3 choices, and we have a consequence associated with each choice. Okay? So if you look at choice A, if you look past that first line break, that first blank line, you notice in brackets, I have like a little quick and dirty programming note. Return to question slide when user selects try again button. So when there are little programming notes like that, I'll just add them in brackets. Again, this is really lightweight. It's a very quick approach to storyboarding. And I usually work through this in close collaboration with my clients, with my stakeholders, so they know what's going on. They can picture the final project. I've shown them examples already. So if I was just handing this off to a developer, I would need to add more details around programming and all of that. And I have handed off storyboards like this to developers, but I go back through and I add more instructions, and I always give them a prototype as well so that they can see how this storyboard translates into an actual developed interactive prototype. But check this out. This is a very agile approach to storyboarding, but it's good. This is what I use to get approval for all of the content before moving forward to development with my own clients, where I do the instructional design and the development. So this hasn't failed me yet. Once we get this approved, there are no changes to the content. I really like this approach to storyboarding for this type of project. But you can see this is much more like lightweight than something like this, where it's much more formal, much more differentiated section by section, whereas this is kind of just like one big flow. What's happening when we select choice A, we'll read all of that right in the consequence. And you notice I do some very light color coding as well, so we know which choice is correct, which choice is incorrect. And here's one more example. This is kind of a text-based storyboard for a video or for a very animation-heavy project. You know, maybe you're still developing it in an authoring tool, but essentially it's just animated slides with and you just press the next button to go to the next one. So notice we have like a file name. So you can think of that left column as like a slide number or a file name or whatever. But it's really helpful because when you do have it named or numbered like this and you hand this script off to a voiceover artist, they can just name the files with the exact numbering system you have here. So it can become much easier when it comes time for development. So notice we have the narration in one column. So this is what will be said, right? This is the narration that will be playing, and we're going to need visuals at all times to support that narration. So that column on the right, it's literally just a text-based description of what will be happening along with that narration. And again, I had some fun writing this just now. If you paused the video and read this, or if you've been reading this, you can see I had a little too much fun. I don't know if this is like a horror movie storyboard or what, but let's just look at the narration. When you visit the office and notice that the air is cooler than usual, there could be a problem. If the lights are off and you don't see anyone around, then there's definitely a problem. So now if we look at the visuals column, we start with a full screen image of office with people. There's a light blue overlay with low opacity snowflakes appearing when the narrator says the air is cooler than usual. So, kind of just to give like a frosty effect, like it's cool here. And then we fade in a dark overlay and fade out the people with the second sentence. So I don't even think I'm using full sentences here. Clearly, I'm just like writing like, I just want to give someone an idea where if a client is reading this, they get an idea of what's going to be going on the screen when that narration happens. So this is purely for like seeking approval on this storyboard, seeking approval on the vision before going ahead and just building out a whole video and then hoping that the client likes it. So there we go. This will just continue, so on and so forth for an entire video. And you can imagine how you can combine some of these different storyboarding approaches. Maybe we have something like this for the interactive slides, but then maybe we have scripts where we would develop out like a 5-minute video or a 2-minute video, and that would just be dropped into a slide in Storyline with no interactivity over it. So you can combine these different approaches to create one big storyboard document that you seek approval on. Hopefully this gave you some different ideas. Again, if you have used different storyboard approaches or you have any feedback or comments or questions about these, definitely drop a comment. I'll do my best to answer, and I know we have a lot of really smart and experienced designers who hang out on this channel. So let's see what I have for you next. So the different tools we can use to storyboard, let's chat a bit about that. My favorite, hands down, is just using Google Docs because it is so easy to collaborate. It's free. The clients can leave comments and we can all edit it in real time and see who is suggesting which edits. So just a great collaboration tool. It's super lightweight and I love having it in the browser. I can access it from my phone if I need to. Very good lightweight tool. Microsoft Word, probably the most popular tool for storyboarding just because, Word is so popular and you can create tables and stuff easily in there. PowerPoint is also a very popular tool. So you can use the kind of table layouts that we've been talking about, but I've also worked with storyboards where how it looks in PowerPoint is exactly how it will look in Storyline. And then we have like the programming notes and stuff like off to the side, kind of off the screen or in the notes. So I loved working from those because I can just import the PowerPoint to Storyline. I kind of have the assets I need, and then I can just kind of add the interactivity as needed to each of those slides. And then, of course, you can just do the storyboarding in your eLearning authoring tool of choice. It removes one step. You don't really have to do the importing. You can kind of just work from Storyline. You see the instructions on the slide. You can just kind of build it out slide by slide once that storyboard gets approved. But I use Google Docs just to keep it really lightweight. Let us know if you've done storyboarding in the past, which tool you prefer and why. I think that will help give us some perspective here in the comments. And then finally, a way to really save some time when you are storyboarding is to build out storyboarding templates. So again, it saves you time, but it also serves as performance support for you. And you can use these templates to kind of guide your own development instead of having to start from scratch. So it doesn't just help you save time on like a slide by slide level, right? Like we have these slide based storyboards where you can see, okay, here's what's going on slide 1.2. But you can also build a template to help you on a larger, like structural level. So again, if you're designing a traditional course, Gagne's 9 events serve as a really good start to building a storyboard template. So, Gagne's first event, gain attention, you would have a section in your storyboard for like gain attention. And you can explain, here's how you're going to gain attention at the beginning of this lesson or this module or whatever it is. When you need to go ahead and present the objectives, you have a section in your storyboard. Here's how we're presenting objectives. Stimulating prior recall. Again, you would just have a section in the storyboard. Here is how we're going to stimulate prior recall. So templates like this, it makes sure that you are hitting all of these necessary pieces for a really solid, cohesive learning experience. Check out the Gagne's 9 events video if you haven't already. And I do want to say, oh, and then I have another section here, like questions with consequences. Like I have a template where I have like all of this already set up. So then it's just very easy for me to kind of build it out with a client. Because sometimes I build this while I'm on a call with a client, or I'll just take quick notes through here while I'm on the call with the SME. And then I'll go ahead and write it out further when I'm on my own. But yeah, so the templates can really help. And I do want to extend an offer to you. If you'd like to build a template together, like maybe we do a live event here, like a webinar, and we'll build this template live together, talk about what we're doing as we do it, and hopefully build just like a really solid storyboard template. And then I'll just give it away to everyone for free. I'll make it so you can download it and use it on your projects. If you want to do that, let's try to get this video to 250 likes, and we will do that session. So seems like it will be fun. I have a feeling that will be useful for people just because, people have asked about this video for a while. But if you want to do it, drop a like on the video, and we will definitely make that happen. Now, if you're watching this because you want to become an instructional designer, hopefully you know by now, but there is a full Become an Instructional Designer playlist. It's constantly growing, but going through that playlist should definitely help you get a leg up in the job market and stand out. A lot of people have found success going through those videos and putting them all into practice. And then finally, again, if you just show your support by dropping a comment, liking the video, and subscribing to the channel, it really lets me know that these videos here are helping you out. They do take some mental effort to make, but I love actually doing the recording like this and getting them out there for you all and hearing about how they're helping you out. So show some support. If you've made it here, you're already helping with the algorithm juice just by watching the whole thing here. So I really appreciate you. There are a lot more videos to come that will help you with your instructional design and e-learning skills. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now.